Welcome to The Debate. We're looking today at the digital revolution that's reshaping global maritime trade. And the data is presenting us with this really vivid, undeniable contrast, a true tale of two ports. On one side, you've got the hyper-automated, almost seamless world of ports like Singapore and Rotterdam, where the entire focus is on optimizing every single millisecond with AI and real-time data.
And on the other side, you have this foundational struggle in emerging markets across Africa, places like Nigeria, Algeria, where the core challenge isn't optimizing efficiency that's already there. It's about getting rid of these crippling bottlenecks, the corruption, the dense, opaque paperwork that just actively stifles any real economic growth.
In that contrast, it really forces us to rethink the role of a technology like blockchain. What is its true function in the supply chain? Is it that final layer that ensures the data integrity you need for AI to run at maximum speed? Or is it the foundational mechanism you need just to establish basic trust and accountability in places where, frankly, paper systems have completely failed? We're really asking, is blockchain about speed or is it about governance?
I'm going to argue that blockchain's greatest value is in enhancing the efficiency and data reliability of ports that are already advanced and digital, and that this capability also actually provides the best path for what we call technological leapfrogging in emerging markets. It's an efficiency tool first. And my position is that its primary and I'd say most urgent value, especially for the economic health of the global South, is institutional. It has to be a transparency layer, an accountability layer that fights the corruption and bureaucracy that basically acts as a tax on trade.
Okay, so when we look at these mature digital ports, their entire operation is fundamentally driven by predictive analytics, by secure data exchange. Take the port of Singapore's PSA vision. They're envisioning a whole ecosystem that relies on AI-powered forecasting, embodied robotics, and these autonomous horizontal transport vehicles. Basically, driverless trucks moving containers around. And Rotterdam has its famous digital twin, a virtual model that processes just massive amounts of real-time data to optimize every single decision.
Sophisticated systems, for sure.
They are, but they're also fragile. These incredibly complex systems are only as reliable as the data that flows into them. We see in the literature that, something like 30% of vessel delays, even in a highly efficient port like Rotterdam, can be traced back to simple data quality issues. It's not corruption, it's just friction and fragmentation among the dozens of parties involved in one container's journey.
So where does blockchain fit into that specific picture then?
This is where it really shines, as an integrity layer. Its strength is providing an immutable, tamper-proof ledger. It secures data inputs, everything from a sensor reading on a container to a customs declaration, and it establishes this cryptographic certainty that just reduces friction. Rotterdam's initiatives have been targeting this for years, trying to reduce the paper trail among the 20, sometimes more, stakeholders for a single shipment. So here, blockchain is purely about maximizing the quality of the input so the AI can do its job. It's about speed through verifiable data.
I see why you emphasize that technological necessity, but I have to say, I find that focus a bit misplaced when you consider the actual human and economic impact blockchain could have globally. Securing data for an autonomous ship is a fine goal, but that need, it just pales in comparison to the urgent need for structural trust in emerging markets. In a place like Lagos, the system is fundamentally broken. The cost of doing business is exorbitant, not because the AI isn't optimized, but because the basic governance structure is rotten.
You talk about high costs. Can you lay out the scale of that issue for us?
The numbers are just staggering. They really reveal the extent of the problem. The data shows that corrupt demands, facilitation payments, unofficial fees, in Nigerian ports increase logistics costs by an estimated 15%. And that 15% isn't just a number on a spreadsheet. It totals around $160 million a year. That's a massive burden passed directly onto consumers for essential goods. It's a huge economic drag created by opacity.
And you believe technology is the answer to that governance failure?
Well, it already is. We have really powerful evidence from the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network, or MAC, and they implemented this anonymous incident reporting tool with the help desk and it functions as this sort of distributed, transparent accountability mechanism. Before this tool, resolving an issue that required an unofficial payment could take 7 to 10 days of delays and back and forth.
Which is just crippling to a shipping schedule.
Absolutely crippling. With the digital tool, that resolution time was slashed down to an average of 1 to 4 hours. And look at the financial impact. Operational costs for a single port call went from roughly $150,000 down to $20,000. That massive drop didn't come from optimizing an algorithm. It came from introducing a verifiable layer of transparency that just destroyed the incentive for corruption. And we see similar things in North Africa. Studies on ports in Algeria found that blockchain-style systems had a huge impact on exports just by improving data security and cutting down on bureaucracy. In these places, blockchain is foundational. It's building trust where there was none.
That is a compelling set of results, I'll give you that. And I acknowledge the impact of those savings, but let me pivot back to my core point here, which is about this potential for digital leapfrogging. I'm just not convinced that emerging markets have to follow the slow, incremental path that northern ports took over decades.
So you're suggesting they can just, skip a whole generation of technology?
Exactly. I believe emerging markets are, in a way, uniquely positioned to adopt these integrated digital systems faster because they're less resistant to change, they have fewer entrenched market players, and, critically, fewer of these rigid, sprawling legacy IT systems that places like Hamburg are constantly struggling to replace.
Technologically, that makes sense, but I just don't buy that the absence of old software is the main driver. That really minimizes the depth of the institutional challenges.
But look at the efficiency gains. They can move directly from a fragmented, paper-based world straight to an integrated digital trust infrastructure. And this leapfrogging drives tangible acceleration. We saw evidence of this in that Algerian port study. It reported a staggering 66.7% impact on lead time reduction. That gain came from introducing certainty and speed where there was only uncertainty and delay. So the technology, specifically the data assurance, it can accelerate these improvements faster than slow policy negotiation.
That's an interesting data point. But institutional capacity, not the lack of legacy software, is the real structural blocker. Technology alone does not erase misaligned incentives or corruption. That requires sustained political will. This is the political economy of the ports we're talking about.
And how does that political economy manifest, practically speaking?
It means officials, customs agents, some freight forwarders, they have a vested interest in the current opaque system because that inefficiency is where they extract these unofficial rents. If you just digitize a corrupt paper process without changing the incentives, you don't get transparency. You get what you could call a digital bottleneck, where the same corrupt behavior just shifts online. We have to remember this technology faces real hurdles: lack of local technical training, regulatory challenges, and the fundamental need for public-private dialogue to set standards everyone will actually enforce.
See, I'm not convinced the political will has to come before the technology. In fact, I'd argue the reverse is often true. I mean, think about mobile money services across Africa. Necessity and tech drove adoption, bypassing traditional banks, and that forced the regulatory structures to catch up.
That's a good analogy, but financial services are consumer-driven. Port governance is a state function.
True, but the technology itself forces transparency by generating undeniable, hard data on delays and costs. That data is essential for a constructive dialogue with governments, for groups like MACN to show the real economic cost of doing nothing. The immutable record gives you the leverage you need to challenge the status quo. If the cost of corruption is suddenly visible and traceable, the political incentive to keep things opaque starts to shrink.
But the material points explicitly to political will being the missing piece in Nigeria, which contributes directly to congestion. We can't ignore that context. Without a commitment to addressing governance first, trying to digitize a system built on unofficial payments will fail. MACN's success didn't come from just installing software. It required methodical assessment and negotiating direct and immediate consequences for noncompliance. That's policy and enforcement, not just code.
But the ledger facilitates that enforcement. Let's go back to the Algerian study. The data security dimension of blockchain was rated as having a 65.2% effectiveness. That capability, the assurance that the shipment data is accurate and tamper-proof. That's what builds the trust among stakeholders in the first place. That data integrity layer is the necessary precursor for both effective anti-corruption measures and future AI deployment. The tech helps solve the governance problem by making corruption more costly and the rewards of transparency immediately visible.
Okay, so it seems we agree the technology is critical, but we fundamentally disagree on the primary causality. I'm arguing that technology enables institutional trust, which then unlocks efficiency. You're arguing technology enables efficiency and data integrity, which then forces institutional trust.
That duality is exactly what makes this so fascinating. In the global north, blockchain is the reliability layer for automation. It's about making sure the digital twin gets verified data. In the south, it's the accountability layer for trade. It's about establishing foundational trust.
And the really interesting trajectory is how these two different paths are starting to converge. Once African ports establish that foundational data quality and regulatory trust, the institutional stability I'm talking about, they'll be perfectly positioned to mature into automation-heavy environments. Their leapfrogging potential, as you said, is still there.
It's a unique advantage of starting with a cleaner slate. But the reverse convergence is also happening. Northern ports, already so focused on speed, are facing huge demands on ESG compliance, on verifiable provenance, on supply chain resilience.
Exactly. And those are governance issues, not pure efficiency problems. They demand a transparent record of origin, of labor conditions, carbon footprint, and this means the trust mechanism aspect of blockchain, the very capability Africa is using to fight corruption, becomes increasingly relevant even in Rotterdam. They use it today for container throughput, they'll use it tomorrow for ethical accountability.
The future architecture of global trade really relies on this merger. We're moving toward a future where, sophisticated systems, maybe agentic AI that can autonomously manage negotiations between shipping lines and customs authorities will become common.
And those AI agents can't function without a tamper-evident shared data backbone. They can't just decide to reroute a container if the underlying data can't be instantly and cryptographically verified. It requires a structure built on both maximum efficiency and verifiable institutional trust.
So that is the ultimate synthesis. The data shows that blockchain is a potent tool, but its primary utility is entirely context-dependent. The question isn't if it's useful, but whether the greater need right now is to optimize existing speed or to establish foundational trust.
Right. The solution has to be tailored. If the primary tax on trade is corruption, the solution must prioritize transparency. If the primary tax is fragmentation, the solution has to prioritize data integrity for automation.
I still maintain that blockchain's ability to provide verifiable data integrity and enable that technological leapfrogging offers the most powerful long-term contribution, regardless of the starting point. I think that technology compels the change.
And I'll conclude by emphasizing that while technology is the enabler, context dictates its use. Until the political economy and entrenched corruption are addressed, blockchain's most impactful function in developing economies has to be solving the human problems of trust and accountability. It has to be an institutional layer before it can ever be a true efficiency layer.
A rigorous illustration of how the function of any transformative technology is, at the end of the day, dictated by the environment it's deployed into. A fascinating look at the digital divide in global maritime operations.